The phrase cancer is a metabolic disease is connected to your lifestyle and the choices you make about self-care. It's also connected to how you eat and how you nourish your body. The standard American diet, which is how a lot of people eat, coffee and a donut or a frappy sugary thing in the morning with a pastry, and then some processed fast food for lunch and maybe pizza for dinner. That kind of standard American diet with the processed food literally quadruples the cancer rate. That's a scientific fact. I'm not making that up. That's not just for breast cancer. That's cancer across the board.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello there. Welcome to another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast show. Hosting today, Coach Chris Wilson. So happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. Another really interesting conversation that is, I'm hopeful, and I know our guest is hopeful, will reach and really help people on the other end, which is, again, why we do the podcast. We do the podcast to help people in their life, whatever that looks like based on our conversation. That maybe they need to be more physically active in their life. Maybe they need to do more for their mind and to lead themselves a little bit better. Maybe they need to, do something in their spiritual health. And there's pretty much nothing that we're not willing to tackle in terms of subjects on the podcast. Strong by Design, you are created strong by design to be strong in body and mind and in spirit. And this conversation obviously really kind of tackles all three of those very well. And we will get there. So I just thank you so much for choosing our podcast. There's so many great podcasts out there in the world, many that I listen to. I wish I had more hours in the day to listen to more podcasts because there's so many good ones out there. But this podcast is a ministry really for us here at Critical Bench. We are a health and fitness publishing company, and we have been making products and programs for over 2 decades to help people live stronger, fuller, healthier, longer lives. And again, this conversation will help many, many people I know on the other end of it, especially, of course, the ladies out there, but really anybody, because this topic today affects all of us on some level. We've all dealt with this firsthand, maybe in our own family or close friends or people that we work with. So this is a conversation that's good for all of us to listen to just be armed with more information. And so if you're a past listener, thank you for coming back. If you're a new listener, you're in for a real treat. And go back and listen. We have over several hundred episodes here on the podcast, and so many terrific guests and topics for you to listen to. So our guest today, Dr. Carol Lourie, she's an amazing woman. I had the opportunity to be introduced to her a few weeks ago. We got to speak, and it was a great opportunity to have her on the podcast, again, to be able to reach and support all of these amazing women in the world who really need to hear her voice. She is a dedicated practitioner, over 3 decades of clinical experience as a naturopath, an acupuncturist, and homeopath. That's a mouthful. She's helped thousands of women to recover their health after breast cancer diagnosis through her holistic protocols involving nurturing nutrition, not dieting, targeted supplementation, healthy lifestyle changes, and an empowered mindset. Again, this ties right into everything that we're all about here on Strong by Design. She said some really cool things too, and I want to read this. Usually I don't read too much here on the podcast, but I wanted to read some words that Dr. Carol had to say. And she said, "Here's the truth. Illness starts before the symptoms appear. Treating only the symptoms of a disease, and this applies to pretty much all disease, does not help you recover your health. You need to get to the bottom of what caused your illness to begin your healing journey. And the path of healing helps you discover not only who you are, but enables you to create the life of your dreams. We support this by addressing the emotional and spiritual components of breast cancer, so deep healing can occur. And there is always a path for healing. So, Dr. Carol, welcome to Strong by Design. So wonderful to have you.
I'm so honored and excited to be here, especially your name, Strong by Design. I mean, the name of my program is Empowered Through Breast Cancer, Empowered Against Recurrence, and being strong inside and out is the way forward.
Yes, no, without question, it absolutely is. And again, this topic of conversation is very dear to my heart just because of people that I know, that I'm close to who are dealing with this, and people in my life that I've lost to cancer, not breast cancer, but other forms of cancer, my mother and my older brother. And so anytime I can talk about this and then also share that information with our listeners is always worth doing and makes me feel good. Makes me feel like, you know what, today I maybe helped somebody on the other end in their fight, in this battle. And I help to arm them with the words that they need to drive them for real change. So first I want to ask you, how did you get interested in this type of preventative medicine where you're merging the holistic, the naturopathic medicine with the oncology? Because I know it's not all just one. It's a mixture.
I'm an integrative practitioner, which means I believe in taking the best of both worlds. What medical oncology and research has shown to work, and then the other side of cancer treatment, which is what I do. And I studied about oncology as a student at the National College of Naturopathic Medicine in Portland, Oregon. And I knew about breast cancer. It was like a disease. And everyone knows someone who has had breast cancer, and that's a very common expression. And for me, it became extremely personal when I picked up the phone one morning and I thought it was a crank call. But what it was is my dear friend hysterically crying, saying, and the women who have gone through this really can relate to this sentence, they found a lump. And you go in for a screening mammogram, or you're doing a self-breast exam, or sometimes your partner will discover something strange. And all of a sudden, they found a lump, and you're scheduled for a biopsy. And then that determines in a great deal about what has to move forward for your treatment. So I committed to going to every single treatment with her. And for her, it was 18 months. She had a biopsy, which generated a pathology report. And then she did chemotherapy and then radiation. And every single time I was in the infusion center with her. And then I took care of her at night afterwards. And I'll just share a really interesting experience. The first time we went for an infusion, we walked in and she was being treated at UCSF in San Francisco, which is a major oncology research center. And the nurse said, well, you look a little thin. Would you like some Ensure? Now, for those of you who are familiar with Ensure, you see the advertising on television. It's filled with sugar. And then there is this concept that cancer is a metabolic disease, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. But cancer, given the choice between sugar for its gas tank or oxygen for its gas tank, chooses sugar even though it has to work twice as hard and gets less energy. And that's known as the Warburg effect. And it was discovered in 1924 and by Otto Warburg, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize for that. So this is a real concept. And so first she was offered Ensure, then she was offered Gatorade, then she was offered a popsicle, a cookie, and a cupcake. 5 times in 4 hours was she offered sugar. Clearly, there's a very strong learning curve that needs to happen here. So we said, no, thank you. And she's there. She's with her healing teas. I'm doing acupuncture for her. She's doing homeopathic remedies. she's sailing through chemotherapy. We go into the oncology office to see the oncologist, and the doctor looks up at her blood work and says, "This is your 4th chemo appointment series, isn't it?" And we went, "Yes." And she goes, "Well, what are you doing?" And we went, "What do you mean?" "Well, your blood work, you're not anemic, your white cell count is fine, you look great, you have a positive attitude, you haven't lost all of your hair. What are you doing?" Because I want all of my patients to be doing that too. So that was a revelatory moment. And that's how my online program started. Women, there's that phrase, if you build it, they will come. My clinical practice changed. I started seeing a lot of women with breast cancer, and then my ability to do one person at a time outgrew. And I started this live online coaching program. So I can reach women literally through all over the world. But let's bring it down to you as a woman who's listening to this right now. There is a lot of value in what the medical oncology world is offering you. And there's another side of treatment that unfortunately they haven't done research. They're not familiar with the PubMed studies. And it's not one or the other. It's not like one is better than the other. It's like you want to really make the best informed choices for your individual diagnosis. And the term breast cancer is a chapter heading because everybody's pathology report and the driving metabolic factors that are underneath the hood, so to speak, are different for everyone. So what works for one person may not be right for you. And that's the beauty of working with someone such as myself.
Right. And that's so applicable in a lot of areas, right? What works for one doesn't work for all, because we all are a little bit different. We have different needs, we have different experiences, we have different backgrounds, and it's like our palates are all a little bit different too. It's just simple things like that. So you have to be able to have these more personalized kind of approaches. Why is empowerment kind of your word at the center of your mission? Why have you kind of geared everything towards that one particular word?
I love that question. Thank you. It's sort of like, why is strong your word? I mean, empowerment for me means that we can't always choose what life plops down in our path. And of course, nobody would volunteer or choose any form of cancer or any serious diagnosis or chronic disease. But once it's there, it's like, okay, here we go. Life has given me this XYZ topic. How can I make the best out of this so I'm not a victim? Now, as children, there are definitely times in life when we are victims, and there are times as adults when we're victims, but I'm not into victimhood as an adult in most circumstances. I mean, I don't want to go into this, but there are times in life when we are victims as adults, especially with gun violence these days. That's very unfortunate. But how can I make the most of a situation? You've been diagnosed with breast cancer. There's a lot of feelings that women have. And one of the experiences they go through is, well, I'm just going to get through it, and I'm going to put all my feelings and thoughts and emotions on the back burner. And you go through the chemotherapy, the surgery, the radiation, some version of that. And at the end of that, you ring a bell, and the doctor says, okay, you're done. Here's your tamoxifen, your aromatase inhibitor. We'll see you in a few months. Well, I see this all the time. That's when all those emotions that have been put on the back burner come flooding forward. And the woman can feel depressed, anxious, overwhelmed. And one woman said to me, I know this sounds strange, but I actually liked going to radiation every day because I felt like I was doing something. And you're given a pill, and those pills have a lot of side effects and make you feel really bad. And you haven't really recovered physically or emotionally from treatment yet. So you're left in this desert, so to speak, and the side effects are really intense, and you just really don't feel well. So then the process becomes, how do I get my life back? And you're a changed person. You haven't just lost your hair, but you've changed in your perspective of what is my life about? What is mortality? How long do I have left? Is it going to come back? Did the treatment get it all? I mean, these are really important questions that you can talk to your friends about it, and they may say, oh, you're fine, don't worry. But you need more than you're fine, don't worry. You need to know that you have a system which is really addressing all the aspect of the phrase, cancer is a metabolic disease.
Yes, and obviously, in reviewing your video on your page, that's actually an area I kind of zeroed in on, because you say breast cancer is a metabolic disease. That means it's not just one thing that causes the breast cancer. It takes many abnormal chemical reactions that come together inside the body to then create the cancer. Indicative of all cancers,
all
right?
Cancers, all illnesses, correct, yes.
Obviously, we're zeroing in on breast cancer in today's conversation, but can you go a little bit deeper on that?
Sure, I would love to. Only 15% of cancer is genetic. That means that 85% is not. So we have lifestyle difficulties. Let's talk about how a lot of women treat themselves. Everybody gets taken care of before you do. You'll feed the kids, you'll feed your spouse. And then I've had women actually, I've said to them, how do you eat breakfast? And they go, oh, well, I eat the leftovers. Now, I had one woman who had serious weight problems, and she said that to me. And I said to her, so are you the garbage can? And it was like, oh, my God, that was a wake-up call for her. She went, no. And I said, so why are you treating yourself like that? And I said, you need to sit down, and you need to take a few minutes and nourish your body and respect that. And it was very easy for her to lose 40 pounds as soon as she started doing that. But how we take care of everyone else goes beyond just eating. It goes, part of the energy of breast cancer is that cells have stopped paying attention to the rules of stop and go. So they're over there doing whatever they want, and they call over to the neighbors and say, come join me. They call over to the next town and say, come join me. And that happens. How we feel inside is reflected outside. So you have this rushed feeling. You always feel like you have to do, yes, yes, yes to everything. And really, you're exhausted and you just want to stay home and rest. So the phrase cancer is a metabolic disease is connected to your lifestyle and the choices you make about self-care. It's also connected to how you eat and how you nourish your body. The standard American diet, which is how a lot of people eat, coffee and a donut or a frappy sugary thing in the morning with a pastry, and then some processed fast food for lunch and maybe pizza for dinner. That kind of standard American diet with the processed food literally quadruples the cancer rate. That's a scientific fact. I'm not making that up. That's not just for breast cancer. That's cancer across the board. And here's a really good example of that. The Japanese culture, before it became westernized or Americanized, and they just were eating their pure Japanese culture, they had almost no breast cancer. As that culture became more Europeanized and Americanized, westernized, their breast cancer rates and their colon cancer rates went up, increased dramatically. So we need to go back to, farm to table. We need to look at what's in our pantry, and if you open it up and there's just boxed food, then there's a problem. You need to think about how far have you strayed from sitting down as a family, turning off your cell phone, not watching television, and having fresh food on your plate. So how we nourish ourselves really is part of how cancer is a metabolic disease. If you're eating inflammatory foods, lots of sugar, lots of white flour, lots of things in a box, those are increasing the pathways. They're gas for the pathways that create inflammation And inflammation is the foundation of any type of cancer and any type of disease. And then let's talk about stress. Stress is part of cancer is a metabolic disease. People have an enormous amount of stress in their lives. Abusive work situations, underpayment, not enough money, especially with inflation that we're having. Your children are suffering in school. There's violence in our community. There's violence on television. It's difficult to stay connected to yourself and your center with all this stress. And there tends to be this attitude for women, you just keep piling it on. And we don't ask for help. So when you look at your stress quotient, and one of my concepts is I have women, do a little stress questionnaire, and you'd be surprised what women come back with. It's like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. And so then you get stressed out, and that increases the inflammation, the metabolic pathways of inflammatory process. Your cortisol is elevated all the time. That means there's more gluconeogenesis in your body, which is more sugar getting into your bloodstream, which is more gas for the cancer gas tank. So all of these concepts merge together to create the phrase cancer is a metabolic disease.
Right. And let me just pause you right there, because we've talked about this in past episodes when we're just talking purely kind of about overall health or nutrition or gut health, is when we're in this fight or flight stressed type of environment on a regular, where we're dripping cortisol all day long. And then we're also undercutting how much sleep we get when we're anabolic and recovering and repairing. So now we're living in a stress state for longer periods of time than we typically should. And then we're also robbing ourselves of the recuperative, healthy time when we should be getting our rest and our sleep, and our body can recharge and do all of the things that it's designed to do. But we find ourselves staying up late and binge watching this and scrolling on that, and still not feeling like we can ever get out of this constant state of stress and anxiety. And that just feeds the cancer, doesn't it?
It feeds every part of inflammation, and it feeds autoimmune disease. It feeds gut dysbiosis. It feeds depression and anxiety, and you're on this vicious circle. And how do you get out of that is the question.
Right. How do you get out of that? Now, you've already touched on 2 of your 5 steps, because you beat me to it, right? You say, and I love it, because these are the 5 steps that you really zero in on in terms of people optimizing their health and ability to fight the good fight, so to speak, and really take their health back. Before I get to those, though, you use a term, recurrence, when it comes to breast cancer. And what does that look like for women? And just talk about that for a moment, because you started to go there a little bit with like, what now? Like, I'm in my treatment, and it's kind of like handshake, high five. Hey, you're looking good. All is well. We'll see you later. And then there's that woman that goes home saying, well, okay, I don't have to do treatments right now. I'm clear. But so you got a gap now of maybe, who knows, 6 months, a year, 2 years. But then let's say, because you went back to living the same life you were living prior to the cancer diagnosis, you've not cleaned things up, and we have a recurrence of the same problem.
We can have a recurrence in the same breast or a recurrence in the opposite breast. And one of the aspects that unfortunately medical oncology doesn't discuss in detail enough is that, especially with radiation, they'll tell you that you're going to have fatigue and your skin is going to get, red and maybe burned. But if you look underneath the hood, so to speak, of what happens with radiation, and there's an enormous amount of research to support these statements, radiation can create breast cancer, more aggressive breast cancer in the opposite breast. Radiation creates long-term side effects from the oxidative stress that happens with radiation. now they're double boosting at the end. And in my opinion, that's not, that's very a sharp-edged sword. So I have, radiation protective protocols in place, and then I have radiation recovery protocols in place. So part of that is the number one supplement to help you reduce your oxidative stress post-radiation is something called ionatocotrienols, and that's a form of vitamin E. Now, you do not want to take that while you're in radiation. Any form of vitamin E is absolutely contraindicated during radiation. But when you've completed radiation, you want to make sure you're getting, now we're going into step number 2. We talked about step number 1, nurturing nutrition. Step number 2 is supplements that work. There's, you think you're doing yourself a favor and you go on Dr. Google and they say, take this and take that. And then you go on Amazon and you think, oh, this label looks nice. How do I know this? I've done this with hundreds of women. And then you come into my program or you come in to work with me in my clinical practice, and I guarantee you that you've wasted hundreds of dollars. Because there is a very specific science of knowing what companies make their supplements to pharmaceutical quality standards, which I've taken very seriously. I've visited almost all of the companies that I do business with. They need to be third-party tested. They need to have research and development facilities. If I call up this company and say, on this label, I need to have information about where it was made and everything, they'll be able to look that up for me. They have tracking with, this product was third-party tested, came from this company. And so I take that very seriously. You have a serious medical diagnostic condition. You need supplements made to pharmaceutical quality standards, not bought from CVS, Costco, or Trader Joe's. Please do not waste your money.
Wow. Well, that right there is just very helpful for people. And the third-party tested thing is really important for those people interested in supplementation, no matter what it is that you're taking. Third-party test means that there's an outside entity that does their own totally unbiased research on that product to verify what it says
Right.
it is. So is it what it says it is, that kind of thing. And they don't, whether it is or isn't, like they're just doing their job. And that's very, very important for someone who's claiming pharmaceutical grade or high quality or
they use high quality and they think that's going to reassure people, but lots of times there's fillers in the product and we don't know what else is in there. So it's extremely important that you work with a practitioner who, like me, I'm very proud to say I'm a vitamin snob, and I'm proud of it because I think it helps save a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's great advice. Maybe at the end you could share your top, just for healthy living in general for men and women, some of your favorite or potential good quality supplementations or brand would be beneficial. So we've obviously talked about some of the 5 steps, because these are really important, and these are applicable, again, like I said, to anybody pretty much that's trying to navigate their way through disease or just live a healthier life. But it's obviously that much more important for the person in the breast cancer fight or journey. We've talked about the healthy, delicious food that reduces risk. It's kind of the foundation where it starts. What goes in, is kind of, you are what you eat, right? Second being the supplements that we touched on, and using trustworthy products and skipping and avoiding the questionable ones. Third, the stress that we talked about, like being able to handle the trauma associated with cancer, like not being stressed while you want to try and provide your body with all the right things when you're going through a very difficult time. So ways to de-stress, optimize your sleep, and still be able to enjoy your life. Could you go a little bit further in that particular one? Because I think this is just such an important element of true health is how we handle our stress, how well we're sleeping, and how we're still finding joy in our life, even during moments like this that are very challenging and stressful.
Sure. I think that cancer creates chaos. And once you know that you have a system that you're following, the 5 steps, the chaos is like, you feel like you're sitting around in this puzzle that's been thrown up in the air and you don't know where to start to put the pieces back together again. When you're doing the 5 steps, you go, oh yeah, I have a path, I have a plan. I'm going to take my anxiety about where do I start? How do I manage this? And I'm just going to start with the 5 steps. And really, we're going to start with step number 1, and you're going to get that down. And then you'll go to step number 2, and then you'll go to step number 3. So as soon as women know that they have a system that's been used on hundreds of women before you, that really helps calm your anxiety. Because in the daytime, you're able to sort of stay busy and push it to the back burner. But at night, all of a sudden, it floods you, and then you have trouble sleeping. So we need to acknowledge that. And there are, I use certain herbs to help women sleep. An example of how herbal medicine is really well researched is kava, Kava, has been really researched. And actually, not only does it calm your nervous system, but it has anti-cancer effects. It's really beneficial. It takes the cells and guides them gently towards the more positive pathways instead of the negative pathways, which create inflammation and can lead towards more progression of disease. So it's beauty. It's beautiful. Botanical medicine, plant medicine, how it's been researched and it's been proven. So I feel very confident when I use that, when I use plant medicine in my steps, that, oh yes, women are going to be getting the nourishment from the earth. And stress and trauma is an ongoing situation. One of the ways that I differ in my approach towards breast cancer is we're not out to conquer, or we're not at war, we're not fighting, because those words have aggression in them. And aggression means inflammation. We need to begin to have a conversation with, as women, what happened that our body and our mind developed XYZ disease. And for me, the topic is breast cancer. And it's not just one thing. You can have a conversation with your tumor, even if the tumor is no longer there and you've had your breast removed. And you need to be in a calm place and just be open to what your body says. I've had women say to me, well, I had this trauma that happened 25 years ago, but it can't be that. And actually, when we helped the woman center and begin to conversation with herself, it was that. It was what happened 25 years ago. One woman recently lost her mother, and then her sister took her to court over the estate, and it was extremely aggressive and not nice, and it wasn't necessary. Nobody was trying to steal any money from the sister's inheritance, and then she developed breast cancer after that very difficult experience. So she might have had a tendency to get a certain disease. That's called epigenetics, but you can control to a certain extent what genes get turned on and what genes stay off. And when you have stress, that on switch is pushed up. And I think part of recovering from any serious illness is beginning to have a conversation about okay, body, okay, mind, I got autoimmune thyroiditis, I have colitis, I can't get pregnant, I have breast cancer, ovarian, gynecological cancer, colon cancer, what is going on? So it's from that perspective, in the 60s, Gerald Ford's wife came out that she had breast cancer. And before then, I remember that because I'm old enough, before then, breast cancer was something that was a shameful disease. It was hidden. It was like embarrassment. Nobody talked about it. But she came out and she said, I have breast cancer and this is what it looks like. And then we had the war on cancer. And that's a very masculine approach, the war on cancer. And I'm a woman, and I think breast cancer is a very feminine disease, and we need to have a little different perspective. We don't want to be aggressive with our body or our mind. And there's a lot of negativity that our thoughts we have in there, and we have to become conscious of how we're always pushing ourselves, how whatever we do isn't perfect enough. We did A, we should have done B, C, and E. It's nonstop. So learning how to separate yourself out from those thoughts and that pushing energy is part of the 5 steps. It's part of recovering.
Yeah, and being, and we'll get there. I think in the 5th step, you probably get into this a little bit more, but I think the enjoyment of life part 2 is being connected, right, to other people, having a community, having a support system that leads to improved health and maybe to help regulate the stress of life to some degree.
You know, there's the top level of recovering from breast cancer as an illness, but there is the deeper level, I think, of the spiritual, emotional, religious connection, whatever phrase that you want to use that fits for you. And the purpose and how you get clear about what's important to you in life. I've had women quit their jobs after they've been diagnosed because they didn't like the boss, they didn't like the situation, they realized it wasn't serving their deep heart needs. And part of what I talk about in that 5th week, which I just finished teaching, is we all need to have something that has to do with self-nourishment and joy and doesn't have anything to do with, you know, going food shopping, doing the laundry, putting gas in the car, cleaning the house. What is that for you? Where is your creative outlet? And there is not, you know, when you look at television and you have commercials, there's commercials for women taking antidepressants, but there's no commercials for women saying, what is your joy? What brings you joy? What do you do for creativity? How are you sharing that vision with the world? I mean, it could be knitting, it could be crocheting, it could be baking, it could be gardening. You know, what is it? You can be spending time with your grandchildren and, you know, because their parents are so busy, you can help them find their creativity. It's endless. You can read. You can decide you want to read. Teach yourself another language. It's, you know, what brings you joy.
That's right. No, and I think everybody, if they think back to their childhood, everybody could probably name 3 or 5 things that they really enjoyed when they were younger to do in terms of hobby or play or with friends, activities of some kind. But what happens to that oftentimes as adults, right? They just kind of get pushed aside, forgotten about, because, well, I'm an adult now. I don't need that kind of stuff. Well, no, you do, actually. And I think in large part, that's why we get old, why we don't age well, is because we start to skip and remove all of the things that brought us joy and so much life as young people. And I've talked about that in particular in many past episodes here. It applies to everyone in all phases of life, that we are to always look to our children for, I think, for some of the answers in life and how to better live our lives. But gosh, there's so much out there if you just look that you could be connected to that's life-giving and fun and enjoyable, and you can connect with people of similar interests and make friends, and these are the important things.
When you're doing joyful activities, your whole nervous system goes out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic, from the catabolic to the anabolic. I mean, so there is research that shows it's very important to have that downtime. And what you said is really 100% accurate. We need that childhood part of ourselves, no matter if we're 50, 60, 70 or whatever. And part of having that is you need to feel well. It's really hard to participate with your grandchildren or your kids if you don't have the energy, if you don't feel well. And so how do you get from a place of not being able to move off the couch? And since you watch my free class, you see that I have this slide. I call it the couch potato syndrome. And there is a photo of a couch with potato on it. if you're not feeling well, that's what happens. And there's no judgment. It's hard to move off the couch if you're toxic from all your treatment. And I don't mean that in a negative, judgmental way. Your body has not detoxified what's happened to you. Your mind is still traumatized. And you're just getting through the days. And there's a beautiful story I'd like to share, which is a woman came to see me 10 years after treatment, and she had the couch potato syndrome. That's how I named it. She couldn't get off the couch. And she'd had a lot of radiation, and over the years, the side effects of the radiation, the oxidative stress, built up in her. And so we started with how do we start? With the 5 steps. Healing smoothie, nutrition, supplements. I did acupuncture on her, and then it took about 2 months, and she came in and she said, well, I feel like I have enough energy to start exercising, or I call it positive movement. I said, okay, what would you like to do? Well, I have a treadmill in my garage. I haven't been on it in 10 years. I said, okay, start out by 5 minutes. And she looked at me and she said, oh, that's not going to make a difference. And I said, well, yeah, we start out with 5 minutes. So exercise on the treadmill, walking on the bike, 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back. That's all you do, because that's the beginning. She went from not being able to move off the couch to 5 minutes. And she came back and she emailed me and she said, well, I was only on it for 5 minutes. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. Now, notice the mind thought. Notice the perspective. This isn't going to make any difference. I go, just humor me. Let's do 6 minutes tomorrow and see what happens. And then so gradually we added another minute. So by the end of 10 days, she was up to 10 minutes. And then she said, I feel like I'm having a little bit more energy. I said, great, let's do 15 minutes a day and keep it at that for a week. So eventually she built up to 30 minutes. She increased the resistance and she had lost some weight. Not that that was the goal, but her energy was starting to come back. And she came in and she said, I have a secret. And I went, what is that? She goes, I love to bike ride. Now, if you asked me to bike ride, I would say no, thank you, because it hurts my rear end all the time. But for her, it was her passion, which is why you need to find a form that works for you. Everybody's different, right? So I said, it's your birthday coming up. Why don't you go get yourself a really nice bike? She said, oh, I can't do that. I said, why not? She went out to this local bike store. She got herself a high-level bike because she was determined she was going to go biking, and she got all the accoutrements, and then she and her husband and her teenage boy, which is a major accomplishment, started biking on the weekends, and they started out by 5 miles a day, and after a month it was up to 40 miles a day. And her son, so this is the benefits, the ripple effect. Her son, who was addicted to the screen, was now outside getting exercise. Her husband also lost weight. I mean, the benefit, if you as a woman start on the path of healing, the benefit ripples through the whole family. So then she says to me, the breast cancer bike ride is coming up in California from San Francisco to LA. I'm going to participate.
Wow.
100 miles,
a lot of
25 miles a day, 4 days in a row. She went in 8 months from couch potato syndrome to 100 miles in 4 days, raising money for breast cancer. That's a true story. This can happen for anyone. Now, you don't have to bike ride 100 miles. I'm not interested in doing that either. But whatever your version of that is, you want to have energy to go to Paris. You want to have energy to take your grandkids on a cruise, which is what somebody's doing right now in my community. What is it that you want to have energy for, that you have couch potato syndrome now, that you think, oh, I can't make this better for myself. I don't know how to start.
It's wonderful. I love it. You don't have to talk to me about the power of movement and physical fitness. That's been my life. Yeah, well, I think it's, there's a couple of things high on my list of importance, but I think just how we move our body, how we move in our day from wake to sleep is key to our overall 100%. Health and well-being. And it is. Our bodies are designed for one purpose, to move. They're not designed to just sit idle. It's just not what our body's designed to do. In fact, I've shared this in past episodes when talking about your brain. Most of your brain is designed for movement. And that's movement within the body and external movement of the body, okay? Yes, it's designed to think and do all those things as well, but most of our brain is designed to propel our body, to move our body vertically forward and everything else. And so when we stop doing that, it shuts down our systems, it doesn't engage things, it doesn't stimulate things, and we start to think very different, don't we? As your example, she, at the start, it's not even worth doing, what's 5 minutes, I'm not going to get anything from it. She had already lost
Right.
before she started. She already sold herself mentally on the fact that it wasn't worth it. But then you told her, hey, just bear with me here, just give it a go to 6 minutes. And then what happens is this mental shift happens. And it happens to everybody. Not at all the same time, but it will happen to everyone when they make movement, intentional movement, part of their everyday life. Whatever it is they want to do, whether it's walking or biking or swimming or whatever, stretching, their body wants more of it. And it's like one of those healthy almost addictions. It's a feeling that it's energizing, that you want more of, and the only thing that satisfies it is to do more of that thing or of something similar. And it's a domino effect of health, I think, in all aspects of our life, because it moves us in other areas of our life. It's not just a physical thing. But before we talk a little bit more about that, your fourth step is keeping track of what's happening in your body. Could you talk a little bit more about the monitoring of your health and the protocol that you're following? Is it working?
Well, that's the question. Is the protocol working? And is what you did with your medical oncologist keeping the disease at bay? Because most women, when they finish treatment, not everyone. I had a woman who went through chemotherapy and she was worse off with stage 3 than she was when she started. And that's because she had certain genes, which if they had done a certain test, they would have known that she was not going to respond to chemotherapy. Most women, when they finish treatment, the goal is to be no evidence of disease. That's the goal. And there is up to between 5 and 15% risk of recurrence. The risk of recurrence is greatest in the first 2 years after treatment. But it doesn't have to be random. So I want to know, if we lift up the hood underneath the car, what is going on in your body on a deeper level other than a comprehensive metabolic panel and a CBC to see if you're anemic or not. What's happening with your vitamin D? Unfortunately, most oncologists don't order this. There is something called zinc, copper, and ceruloplasmin that taken together. Copper is a big driver of angiogenesis, which is the creation of new blood vessels. What's happening with that triumvirate? Where is your body handling? How is your body handling that? And then I want to know everything about how your body is handling sugar. So it's not just glucose that's part of the comprehensive metabolic panel, but I want to know what's happening with your IGF-1, your TNF-alpha, your fasting serum glucose, and your serum insulin, because taking all of those together, if you're having a problem with the receptors in your cells being like the insulin is knocking on the door and the receptors are not recognizing the insulin or seeing it and getting it into the cells, the insulin will build up in your bloodstream. That's called hyperinsulinemia, and that often doesn't show up in standard medical testing. So there needs to be a deeper dive in underneath the hood. Now, if you're a younger woman and you've had breast cancer, I've had women that I've worked with 32, 36 years old. And before you go on any hormone suppression, I want to do what is known as a Dutch hormonal panel. And that tells me, how is your body breaking down your hormones? Because the hormones need to be broken down in a very specific way. And if you're young and you've had breast cancer, whether you have a family genetic predisposition to it or not, we need to find out what's happening with your hormones, even before they put you on hormone suppressing medication. So this information gives me as an integrative practitioner a lot of power in how to help you target the supplements so you can really address that breast cancer is a metabolic disease.
Wow. It's so great. Obviously, your understanding of the needs of the individual far exceed our listenership, and certainly even me, just because of your decades of work in this arena. But it really is as simple as tracking and logging, and then being able to look back and review, this is what I've been doing and this is where I'm at, and how vital that is to anything. Maybe a workout program that you're following, or using an app like I used last year to lose 25 pounds. I used MyFitnessPal. There's a whole bunch of them. That's the particular one I used. And I logged and tracked for 5 months exactly everything I ate every day. And wouldn't you know it, you're a little bit more conscious of what's going in.
Oh, yeah.
And you get results, because when you got to know, you got to punch it in there, and it's got to be the butter, and it's got to be how many ounces of this and how many ounces of that. When you start seeing that information right there in front of you, it's a whole different feeling, and you get a different result from just blindly kind of going through it. So monitoring your health and following the right protocol, like you talked about, is just so key. There's certain tests that don't find certain things, right? If you don't run the right test, you don't get maybe the right results or know enough information. And so it's knowing what tests you need to be taking. I'm feeling for the listener right now that maybe is dealing with their own health, or the health of a loved one or someone that they know. Where can we start to steer them in terms of finding more information from you, maybe getting in touch with you if they're looking and seeking to be able to learn, to be able to have more of a one-on-one relationship with you, or what you're offering to be able to move their health into a different, maybe a different path. Maybe they're just frustrated and they've hit some dead ends with what they've been doing. So what can someone today do, or what can they share with someone that they love and care about who's maybe dealing with breast cancer?
Well, the easiest way to reach me is through my website, and it's my name, Carol, Carol, and my last name is LOURIE.com. And at the top on the right-hand side, I have a Contact Me page. And that takes you, and you'll get to email me, and I will get it. And I answer every email that I receive personally. And then we'll set up a getting to the roots call or something to see. We'll have a discovery conversation about where you are and how can I help you. And if I can't help you, I will refer you to a trusted colleague who I know will be able to help you recover your health. And it's about restoring your life. The goal is, when you get through breast cancer, you want to feel like, okay, I was through this arduous journey, but this next phase of my life is going to be better than what I've had in the past. Because I think healing is always possible, and it's never too late to heal old traumas, and it's never too late to heal from the trauma of breast cancer. And when I teach that week, women are crying and they say, why isn't everybody talking about this? How come you're the only person? I go, I don't know about other people. I can just do what I do. But I think there is an enormous amount of trauma connected to breast cancer and all cancers. And talking about it in a place that's non-judgmental and having acknowledgement of, yes, that was really hard and you did great. Now let's help you get even better. That's a very healing moment.
Yeah, without question. And we've all been impacted, as you alluded to earlier, and what I started to say at the beginning of the of the interview about, cancer is part of our lives. Somebody that we intimately know, or, it might just be a coworker. If you live long enough, you're going to lose friends, family, coworkers to cancer, different forms of cancer. And certainly for the women listening, breast cancer is it the, statistically, is it the cancer that is the scariest for women? It's
the number one cancer after colon and lung cancer for women.
Okay. And, it's knowing what steps to take, as with most things in life. What now? What can I do for myself today? And inaction isn't the answer for sure. We want to be able to provide you with an opportunity to improve your health. And connecting with the right people is really where it's at. So I urge our listeners, go on to Dr. Carol's website, CarolLourie.com, CarolLourie.com, or you can even look at Empowered Against Recurrence, right? Your other, which they would get to that site through that.
Well, they would contact me, and then I would send them to that other site. So, and you'll be posting a link for the Empowered Against Recurrence site on your site. So that's going to happen also, because when this is happening, I'll be doing some free classes that women are invited to attend, and you'll be posting that on your site.
Yes, that'll be in our show notes, our description area will be links, of course, to be able to connect. And I urge anyone to do that, or to share it certainly with someone, as we do with all of our podcasts. Sharing these conversations with friends and family members is really what helps this show grow. And I know when I listen to a really good podcast or hear something that's super informative or enlightening, when I get done, it's like when you finish a good book, I want to tell people about it. So please do that. We would really love that and appreciate that. Hit 5 stars. Leave us a rating or a review based on this episode or past episodes here on Strong by Design. Dr. Carol, I can't thank you enough for your encouragement, all of your terrific information. And I know that's just the tip of the iceberg for some people who really need your help. But maybe this will be, the one thing that they needed on their journey to kind of kickstart it. So thank you for coming on the show and just being so terrific in the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's no accident, ladies, that you're here and you've heard this. I don't think it's an accident. So please take that seriously, and thank you for having me. Blessings to everyone.
Oh, thank you. Yes, absolutely. We thank you for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. As always, we will be releasing another episode next Wednesday. Sometimes when we have lots of episodes, we even drop some on Saturdays. But every week here on Strong by Design is a new topic with a guest, an expert, or sometimes we even just do an in-house episode with our amazing cast of hosts. So thank you for coming back, and we'll talk with you very soon. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.